All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 7/22, July 22nd SPIT committee meeting. I will take a motion to approve the agenda.
I have one amendment to the agenda. You'll go after the Citizens Advisory Committee, item number 5, Parkwood mascot name change.
Okay.
Update.
All right, we will add number 6 to be the update on the Parkwood High School mascot. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the amended agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, next up, we have a technology update. Mr. Parker?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Morrell. Part of the agenda uploaded was a sheet indicating our relief funds from the state, and I'll share my screen so that you'll be able to see it on the screen. So part of the Corona Aid Relief and Economic Security Act, which is called CARES in North Carolina, allows funding for the Corona Aid support. And part of that is, one piece of this is in the technology, and they have the program report codes 124, 126, and 128, and I indicated what those include and the amounts beside them. Part of that was estimating what devices we could get for students, staff, and for connectivity. And on the sheet, I indicated that there's 618 Chromebooks we will buy with these relief funds. The estimated time of arrival is 9/3. We ordered these Chromebooks back in mid-June, and we still, the vendor's just so backlogged with every school district in the nation trying to produce these and get them shipped and get them to all the districts and distributed, that our estimated time of arrival for Chromebooks, and these are just our extras, are 9/3. For the capital funds, which we bought the 10,250 for grades 3 through 5, those also will be delayed. They won't arrive until 9/3. Part of our contingency plan is we will use our existing older devices when school starts. We will issue those in a 1-to-1 environment in grades 2 through 5. And then when these new ones do arrive, the 618 plus our 10,250, we will swap students out with new devices as those arrive and get into the elementary schools. But we will start schools in a 1-to-1 environment in 2 through 5. Apple iPads, we in K through 1, we're at a 1-to-5 ratio. We ordered 900 iPads, and that's to supplement some of the grade levels. It still won't bring us to a 1-to-1 when students are in school, but it will provide more resources for our students. Those are estimated to arrive October the 8th. Which is Apple is just like Lenovo and every other major vendor, they're backlogged trying to get devices out, get them registered, and then send them to districts. But we have enough in the schools right now to do instruction. For the staff iPads, for the staff devices, we ordered the new Lenovo L15s, or similar to the 570s that staff currently have. They're just newer and sleeker and thinner. But we ordered 139 of those in case staff have a broken device when they return to school, or we need additional units to support remote instruction. We bought those for our staff. And the last piece was the connectivity for students. So we looked at ways that we could support our students who do not have internet at home or have a way of participating with online learning. So we bought 750 T-Mobile 5G hotspots. So these are the fastest and best that T-Mobile offers. And remember, T-Mobile merged with Sprint, just as a side note to that. So the Sprint devices will eventually move over to that 5G network that T-Mobile has. And part of the 1 Million Foundation, we have actually had delivered 2,040 more hotspots. Those are free. It's part of our partnership with the 1 Million Foundation. So we're going to have about 2,800 devices for next year for students who have trouble connecting or just cannot participate in remote learning. The last piece
Hey, Jay.
is, yes, sir.
A quick question on that. I know I've heard down my way with the Sprint devices. I'm not sure about T-Mobile, but I'm assuming the same network. People having trouble connecting with those devices in the rural areas.
Yeah, so
do we have another option we can go to, possibly, like another carrier, maybe?
we do. The 1 Million Foundation are provided to us for free, and both T-Mobile and the 1 Million, they both come off of cell phone towers. So it's a cellular signal. So how far are you from a cellular signal? So if you turn on your phone and you're getting 1 bar, those devices are probably not getting a good signal either. The 1 Million Foundation, now that they have merged with T-Mobile, they have indicated that they're moving over to T-Mobile's network, which covers that area you're in, Mr. Helms, of the county, and should provide better connectivity. Now, I don't have an ETA on that, when that conversion will happen, but they tell me it will happen this year, this school year.
Okay.
I'm
just worried about,
Mhm.
I guess, people in my way with the remote learning and everything. They go that option, and they're going to have to somewhat.
Yes, sir. And we have
connections, and we have actually problems getting broadband in our way also. So it's another issue.
There's 2 options. I guess as an A/B part of this is on the second line of this, we're going to put 15 mobile wireless routers on buses. So we'll have 15 buses with an actually cellular router also, but it's got a large antenna on it, and we're able to park these in communities or areas where we need connectivity. And this is really a pilot test for us to see how well this works and how much use we get off of it. So we will enable 15 buses and see how this supplements the learning for our students.
Jay, are
Yes,
the
ma'am.
buses are the mobile wireless Wi-Fi connectivity for those 15 buses, are those back ordered also, or when will you have those ready?
No, ma'am, they arrived yesterday.
Okay, awesome.
So we will begin the installation on those buses now. They came in yesterday. So
Okay, your team does the installation?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, great.
There's no
Yeah,
charge.
another quick question too. As far as the buses, is there a way to, like in Canvas, to offload or download like the day's work? Like if you want to go to a school and like download it fast and then bring it home where it's local and then complete it and upload it back up?
Yeah, I mean, you have a couple options there. If the documents are in a Google Drive, there's an option in there to switch that Google Drive to an offline mode, which basically allows you to do what you're talking about. If the teacher has the supporting documents in a Google Drive or Canvas, you can bring that to an offline mode, download the devices, and then go home and work on them, completely disconnected from any internet. And then when you get back to good connectivity, you turn it back on and it'll sync up.
Okay, I think we probably need to get some good instructions on how to do that, probably, especially
Sure.
in the rural areas.
Gotcha. We can provide that. And so I wanted to bring this to our technology committee and let you see how we're spending these funds, what they're being used for, and our intent for the public to know, what devices and what connectivity options they'll have moving into this next school year.
Mr. Parker, I have a few questions about the Chromebooks.
Sure.
So if I understood correctly, we have enough allocation right now for 3 through 12?
We have enough allocation for 2 through 12. And where we're getting they're older Chromebooks, but where we're getting these extras they're our testing reserves. We've had a reserve of old devices that when testing comes around, if the school needs them, we would pull these out. It was a couple thousand of these, 2,000-3,000 of them. So now we're actually pulling those out, and we do not need those testing reserves because when the new ones arrive after a month of school, the new ones arrive, then we're going to pull those old ones back and put them back into our testing reserves, and we'll have extras. But this is more or less a Band-Aid to make it until the new ones do get to our district.
So logistically, can you tell me how that's going to happen? Because I'm thinking it's going to be difficult just to get the initial distribution out. So how are we going to be swapping devices?
So I talk about the initial distribution will be, our teams are in elementary schools now, and they are sorting the Chromebooks alpha by grade level, and they're pre-checking those out. And if you remember, there's a Chromebook acceptance form that parents agree to every year, that they accept this and they know that they're responsible for this device. It'll be used in compliance with Union County Public School standards. And that is a paper form. We adhere to every one of those devices, and parents fill those out. Also in that will be a line indicating that video conferencing, may occur in a remote instruction. So that will also is part of that agreement. And to supplement that, we put it in English and Spanish electronically and providing it to all our elementary schools to use in their communities. On the redistribution of the new ones come in, we're going to work with the principals and do a grade level per week. So we will go ahead and check out the new ones, and it will be a swap, a 1-for-1. You turn in your old one, you get a new one. And we will go ahead and pre-check those out, put labels on them with the names of the students, and then we'll work with the schools to, supplement and change those out.
And for the students that select Plan D, will they be coming by their school for distribution?
Yes, Mr. Morale. I talked to Dr. Topper and Dr. McKinnon, and we put a plan together, have a drive-through for those students, so they could have a contact from a principal indicating a time that they could drive through, and we could just swap them 1-for-1 right through the window.
Okay, could we make, I'm just wondering if we can make Plan D like a priority and give them one of the Chromebooks that don't need to be swapped out, so not one of the older ones, just to make that simpler process. I don't know how your allocation works, if you could kind of prioritize that.
Sure. Yes, sir, we can do that. When the new ones come in, we'll go after the program to provide Plan D students with their devices first before we start the in-school instruction.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Parker, for your update. Ms. Morris, I did notice in looking back over the agenda, I skipped over approval of the prior minutes. Do we want to table that for next, or can I go back?
You can go back. We can do that.
Okay. All right. So agenda item 1C was to review the minutes from the last meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review those?
Yes, I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All right. And seeing that there's 3 of us, well, I'll still go through it. But everybody, I'm sorry. So all in favor of approving the minutes from last agenda?
Aye.
All right, 3-0. All right, moving on to, wow, I was all over the place. Sorry about that. I was so excited about the technology update that I skipped over transportation. No offense, Mr. Denton, Mr. Strickland, but I will now ask for a transportation update.
Thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to communicate what we're doing. I think last time we did this, Jay was in front of me, and now I feel like I'm behind him again, but that's okay. So transportation, I think the plan we got, the 25% per day, allows us to be successful with our bus capacities. As many of you may know, we have a limit of 24 on the bus. We can expand that a little bit based on the fact that our siblings can ride together. So it may be 25, 27, 28, depending on how many siblings are assigned to go to school the same day. Of course, they would be. So I think our plan at 25% allows us to be able to transport students and not have a lot of capacity issues. We are planning to run the routes the same way pretty much every day. I think designing our system that way will allow us to expand in the future. I'm hopeful we can go back to school and get kids in school more than one day a week. And so whenever that happens, if we're running the same routes pretty much every day, we'll be able to expand with virtually no notice for us. We can flip the switch and allow more kids to ride. And so we're hopeful that plan would be the best way for us to adapt to any future changes that might occur with regard to additional students coming to school. We are complying with DHHS requirements. There are many of those that we've had to work on. Temperature checks for drivers. We're planning to have them do a driver attestation form that says they won't come to work if they have a temperature. We're planning to have them, when they deliver their first student to their first set of students to elementary schools, for the schools to check their temperatures then, just to do an additional check that day. We do have a vendor coming in today that will be demoing a unit that we can put in our more high volume areas. When I say high volume, I mean the places where most buses are parked. The problem with some of our checks for temperatures, we have buses parked in multiple locations, and there's not a way to get staff appropriated at every location to get temperature checks done at 5:30 in the morning. So we think by having the schools check them, and we'll have our folks wearing masks, of course, along with students. So by doing that, we don't think that there'll be an issue with checking temperature when they get to the first school location. Regarding temperature checks for students, we're not going to check students at the bus stop. We'll have them, all the checks for temperature and or health checks will be done at the school location. We won't be denying a ride for students who get to a bus stop, don't have a face covering. We'll have those on the buses to be able to distribute to students when we know we'll likely have a situation or two where students refuse to wear, or maybe they have a stated exception and don't wear a face covering. We are preparing a document for parents so that they know that 100% of the time kids may not wear face coverings, and that by putting a kid on the bus that they may be riding next to a student that doesn't have a face covering on. We certainly want them to wear face coverings all the time. We'll be handling that through a disciplinary process with the schools when we run into those situations, but that's just one of the realities of logistics that we're going to run into. We'll have some situations. We're not going to leave kids standing beside the road. The DHHS document requires us to have a plan if we refuse transportation. So we believe that we don't want to create a situation where the driver's having to deny transportation, arguing with a parent beside the road, arguing with a middle school, high school student beside the road, not allowing a kindergarten student to get on because they don't have, because we haven't done some things at the bus stop. Those are all situations we're going to avoid. So we're going to pick our kids up, we're going to bring them to school, we're going to do our screens at the school level, and we think that's the best way to handle that. If a school has a student that has a temperature and they call us and they need to arrange transportation back home, we will accommodate that with the schools. We'll do that after our last buses run their final run for the morning, and we'll be available to go back by the schools. We'll only transport one student on a bus, and that student will be seated at least 3 seats back from the driver. Then we'll clean the bus once that student gets off. So we're going to provide that service for our schools, and we think that's something that they will need because they're going to have those schools those kids separated in different locations in the school. And so instead of them having to keep them all day, we want to try to provide that service for them on the back end. So we're working on that as well. PPE for drivers, they'll have a mask, they will have a face shield that's optional to wear. DMV indicates that that's not a replacement for the actual face covering, but we believe that's additional protection that those folks can have available to them to wear. So we're providing those things. Our monitors on the buses will likely have additional PPE in dealing with some of our special needs students. We've not gotten the final details on that yet, but we're working on that. We'll have some signage in our buses, just general signage about best practices for hand washing and wearing face coverings, that kind of thing. We'll also have our seats marked on locations where we prefer students to sit. We'll not be restricting seats, but we'll have a more positive green check mark, little sticker that goes on the seats, please sit here, kind of thing. So that just face the students out on the bus, window aisle kind of configuration, so that they are hopefully social distance the best way we can on a school bus.
So can I ask you to pause for 1 second?
Yeah.
So I'm unclear, and I'm sure our community is unclear, and I know you live in this every day, but could you just go back and talk about the capacity on the bus and kind of what the requirement is and how we're accommodating that?
So the capacity on a bus is 1 student per seat. Most of our school buses hold 72 passengers. That converts to a 24 capacity. There is language in the DHHS documents that allow for us to transport siblings in the same seat. So the language we're using with our parents is that if the principal assigns a sibling to a seat together, then that would increase our capacity to 25, 26, 27. It could be a little bit more than the stated 24 on a bus because siblings are allowed to ride together. But we would be assigning 1 per seat, and if the principal decides to add that additional student because their brother or sister living in the same household, then we would of course accommodate that.
Okay, we'll be assigning seats for every student that rides.
That should be that's a process we normally follow every year anyway. Students should always have assigned seats on the bus.
Okay.
Hey, I have a quick question too about the capacity, and this might be more towards Mark. But one of the limiting factors to opening up more days is the buses. Am I correct?
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button. Could you repeat that, Mr. Hams?
As far as the number of days, like 1 day a week, one of the limiting capacity or factors is the bus capacity, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, and everything that
All
we
right,
do.
so I guess it'd be if we get more parents taking their kids to school, that opens up more bus capacity for other students that could potentially open up more days, correct?
You could make that argument, although I think initially with our concerns with drivers and not having enough, I wouldn't count on that. I mean, that does make sense to think through it that way. But until we see how this thing's going to roll out, I wouldn't make any promises.
Okay. And the other question I have is the state going to suspend the efficiency rating for this year?
Yes. Well, we've been told our funding will be the same this year as it was last year. Now, how they're going to handle efficiency rating and calculating that going forward, we've not been given any information about that, but we will get the same amount of state funding that we received last year.
Okay.
Mr. Morrell, you ready to move on?
Yes, thank you.
So Mark mentioned the status of our bus drivers. We do have, we just yesterday gotten updates on the number of drivers we have available. 25 to 30 drivers will not be coming back, or we'll have vacancies for 25 to 30 buses is what it amounts to. We have some folks that have said they might come back. They're just unsure about the circumstances. And so we counted them as not coming back because most of the time when people say they don't know, it translates to them not showing up. So we have 25 to 30 vacancies. We do have some strategies that we are working on to abate those absences. Of course, double runs is something that people don't really like to hear much of, but that's really the main strategy we're going to have to try to rely on. We have been working on consolidating stops. That'll be a gradual process because we had such a limited time to be able to implement the strategies. And once we found out what we were doing, that we really couldn't go through every single situation. But consolidating stops will allow the routes to be shorter, which means we can probably do doubles a little more effectively. Some parents won't like the fact that their kids are walking a little bit further to the bus stop, but we'll certainly try to minimize that pain where we can. But the double runs will be our major strategy. There's another strategy that we really deferred to you all for discussion at some point, and that's called a no transport zone. State law allows us to implement a no transport zone around schools of 1.5 miles. And so we don't do that here. There are some districts that do already have that implemented. What that would mean for us is that we would not allow up to 5,000 riders for our current student riders would not receive transportation. The reason that's important is because, of course, they'd have to find their own way to school. They'd be either riding their bike, or they'd be walking, or their parents would be taking them to school. That would reduce the number of bus drivers we would need to have available. So the question becomes: is that something that we can tolerate? Is that something we want to be that aggressive with? We didn't feel comfortable at a transportation level in making that decision. We knew that that you all need to be involved in that. So again, that strategy is to basically carve out no transport zones around our schools. Our discussion had centered around maybe allowing Title I schools to be excluded from that. So we would transport all our Title I school students inside the no transport zone, or they just wouldn't have one. And then we would implement a no transport zone around every other school. So that's something that we've not done, but we certainly did consider it. It's something that's in the DHHS document for consideration. And so I want to bring that to your attention.
I would add too, Scott, that and to the committee members, we discussed this at great length as an option to try and make things better. In the end, it's not a recommendation from us to move forward with it. We just felt like it was too much with everything else going on at this time. It is something that we might could consider maybe next year, given more time to implement a plan and communicate it out. But we just wanted to share it with you all as something we think.
So we did look as well at maybe having some Charlotte-Mecklenburg bus drivers come over and drive for us. I don't want to be in a situation where we're trying to take their drivers away from them and it ends up being what it would be. I wanted to try to contract with them somehow or figure out a way we can get their folks to come over here. But bottom line is we have to follow our employment processes. And so we would have to have those folks resign from Charlotte-Mecklenburg and come over here. The reason we're thinking about that is because obviously they're going to be remote learning after the first 2 weeks. And we thought maybe we could somehow utilize their drivers. So we've been trying to think out of the box on different strategies to try to help us out. But for that one was one of those deals where it's not going to work out for us. So we are trying to get routes out by August 3rd, if I didn't mention that, to our schools. And I want to stop there and ask you any additional questions about what we're doing. We've gotten communication materials. We have question and answer documents for our parents, for our drivers. We've got some instructions for our schools that we'll be getting out to them. And I'll stop there and ask any questions you might have.
I got one question. The 1.5, is that I guess a radius, or is it based on drive distance?
It is a radius around the school, and we'd have to draw those lines based on what makes sense, and we'd have to look at every school, and it might be just a smidge different for every school depending on, if you had a major highway, that you wanted to avoid, you might draw the line a little bit different from one school than you would another one, but pretty much it's a radius.
Okay, yeah, because I can think of especially down my way, rural areas, you could be probably 2,000 feet from school, but it could be being like a mile and a half, with the roads and everything going around to get to it. But I guess for me, I'd probably be against doing that. So
Yeah, I
there might
think
be a couple of schools that will work for, but they'd have to be neighborhoods next door to it, basically. But
yeah, I would say most of our schools are not very conducive to that. So we're not in a city setting where there's city blocks and sidewalks all leading to the school. So I think it'll be difficult.
yeah, because I know my kids, they're 1.5 miles from the school, but I wouldn't feel comfortable going down it's a country major highway, so going to school to get to it.
Right. Okay. Mr. Denton, anything more on the transportation update component?
I don't think so. We have the AT&T contract that I wanted to update you all on. If you want to move on to that item, we'll do that. So we talked with our contractor, and of course, contractors are now limited to 2 students per vehicle. Last year, we could transport up to 7 per vehicle, and so that's going to really put a damper on their ability to provide services because they're not going to be paid as they might have been paid last year. So what we asked them for was a daily rate, and that's kind of common actually for a lot of those districts use a daily rate instead of a per student per day rate. The daily rate is based on transporting 6 students per day on our 3-tier system, 2 students for each tier. And so we would be planning to use whichever vehicle that they have, and they have up to 4 vehicles. We'd be planning to use a daily rate to transport those students. And basically the daily rate is our daily, the daily rate is a per student per day rate times 6. So that's, we just want to update you all on that. There was some discussion last time about the amount of money we spend for contractors. We wanted to be sure that you all were aware of what we're planning to do with that. We do think we'll have to use at least one or more of the vehicles because of capacity issues and because of the EC students. Some of our special needs students may go more than one day a week, and so we may need their services more than we originally thought, particularly with them being limited to 2 students per ride. So we want to make sure that you all were aware that we were adjusting or seeking to adjust that rate to a daily rate.
So if I'm doing my math correctly, though, I mean, this really, with our 25% capacity that we're doing, basically sending kids, you know, once a week, would it not end up equaling the same?
So
Like, I guess could the A day, B day, C day, D day assignment be based on if you need this, you know, specialized transportation as a component of that? Could we allocate the children based on their, you know, their day of the week, based on that being one of the requirements? And then if that's the case, I'm thinking it would be about the same, right?
keep in mind that this contract is used to transport some of our most needy students. McKinney-Vento students, students with special needs, those students may go more days per week than the standard 1 day a week. And so we don't yet know what that looks like. We're trying to prepare for whatever might come. And if we have a need to use the contractor for that support for the longest routes for the McKinney-Vento students who live way out, then that can only transport 2 kids. So that limits us on how we can get kids to school, and we have to use more yellow bus to try to do that. So that's it wouldn't exactly be a 1-for-1 as I'm thinking about it. It will be very dependent upon the kids and when they're assigned to come.
Okay, so if I could ask you to pause there for a second, and Dr. Houlihan, I don't know if you can provide any more insight on those children going more than the 1 day a week.
Yeah, right now we're working with principals on what I keep calling a tiered student assignment schedule to look at identifying, you know, every 2 to 3 weeks at a time, allowing more kids by different category like EC or McKinney-Vento or whatever that might be. Miss Morris is taking lead on helping develop that tiered assignment since she oversees our student assignment division, but that is something that we are meeting with principals about today. And I will be sharing that kind of plan with the board this afternoon, and happy to provide that documentation. But that is something that we are strongly considering and trying to take this, you know, about 2 weeks at a time. And so as an example, the first 2 weeks of school, looking at trying to get some of our EC separate setting and EC self-contained as a top priority, as well as seniors who have any kind of a credential that they need for graduation to have more days of face-to-face instruction. So and then obviously monitoring the situation every single day, every single week to make adjustments as we move forward.
And do we have any kind of a resource posted online where parents can go and be able to see these updates as we're making them? Like, I know we have our FAQ sheet and things like that, but as some of these decisions are made, is there a place where, like a resource where they could go to get further insight?
So when the answer is yes. When we released the information last Friday with regard to Plan B and Plan D on our feature story section, we're working on a dedicated page for reopening of schools, and we're going to load everything there. We're also working on a new set of FAQs that will be released publicly, hopefully by the end of the day, today or tomorrow, that will answer a lot of these same questions that we keep getting. And so all of these resources will be loaded on one page and easy access for our families. Okay. So as these decisions are made, that will become part of those FAQs.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Mr. Denton.
So we just wanted to update you all on what we were thinking about the assistant travel and transport contract. There was a lot of discussion the last time we talked about Defender and approving their contract. So we didn't want any surprises, and that's why we want to bring you out to you.
So with potential for additional spend, has this gone through finance? Is Shauna aware? Do we have a line item for this?
At this point, we've not asked for any additional money. Transportation budget is it's basically a block grant from the state. We are able to use state funds to pay for contract transportation. And so presumably if a bus did not run, we're running fewer buses because we have fewer drivers that assign more runs to a contractor. We would simply shift that cost from the bus operational side to the contract side. So it's not something we have to ask for additional funding for.
Right. I do know this was a line item that we were strongly considering as we were going through our, our budget process this year. So I think we're all kind of sensitive to this. Do we have any kind of projected? So the ask is to take this to the full board. We have an action on this, and I'm unclear on what we would actually be voting on. So, I see us moving to a daily rate, but I don't know what the impact is economically to our budget. Are we prepared with any of that information?
I don't know how we could project what it will be like because we're just so unsure about the number of students that will be riding, when we might expand services, and when we might open up and allow for more than 2 passengers per vehicle. The rate would not change if they transported more than 2 per vehicle on a run. But I don't know how we will project much differently than what we did last year on what we actually used, because there's just so much uncertainty around how many. We know how many vehicles are going to be used, but I'm not sure we know that yet. I mean, we just have a lot of uncertainty. So the answer is no, we don't have a good projection.
And does this need to be voted on? Because we've already approved the total funding for it. It should be a contract amendment. I guess it's more of a question for Michelle.
You all approved the original contract, and so if we're making a change to it, my preference would be that the board reviews that and approves the change to the contract.
So the previous, we did not have a daily rate as part of that contract. It was just a per pupil.
No. That is correct. It was a per pupil per day rate.
Okay.
Now we can certainly calculate what the maximum amount would be if you prefer to know that. It's a very simple calculation. We can certainly provide that for the board in preparation for the next meeting. But I don't see us using the maximum number of days. We're going to try to be as conservative with this type of transportation as we can be because we prefer to use the yellow bus whenever we can.
Well, and Scott, you can do a not to exceed on that max and do the research between now and the next board meeting and provide the committee with any updates in writing with regard to that research and, the commitment of not to exceed what the total amount of funding that the board has already approved. If you need to exceed that, you'd have to come back to finance and this committee with that update and that request.
Yeah, that's what I would ask.
And keep in mind, this is strictly a usage-based thing. If we have to assign a lot of students to it, the cost will be more. If not, we can accommodate them with yellow buses. Obviously, it would be less.
Okay. Any other questions on the AT&T contract revision?
No.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve the AT&T contract revision to include a daily rate per vehicle of $310.
So moved. And then to the full board.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I do ask though that you come to us and do provide what that economic impact would be. And to Dr. Houlihan's point, if you could include a not to exceed, that would be great.
Yes, sir.
All right, next up we have the bell schedule.
So there's one that we didn't talk a lot about in our strategies for dealing with our bus driver shortage was changing bell times. And so what we recommended happen is that we expand our bell times a little bit. We're keeping our elementaries the same. The recommendation is to keep the bell times are pretty much the same for elementaries with 1 or 2 minor changes. Add 10 minutes to our high school start time later, move that start time later by 10 minutes, and then middle schools would move later by 20 minutes. That's kind of on average. If high schools and middle schools ride together, then they may be adjusted about 10 to 15 minutes each, depending on if they ride together or ride separate. So what that does is opens up the transportation window of time for us to arrive better on schedule. Last year we had late buses in a lot of situations anyway when we ran doubles. So we're hopeful that by bringing this additional time window in between our bell schedules, we'll have that additional time to be able to arrive better on schedule with our double run. So that was the premise behind changing our bell times, and I believe that communication is prepared to go out to principals.
I would add as well that this is one of the many strategies that we looked at because we knew we would likely be short drivers. We knew we would be having to continue the double runs. So this made the most sense in terms of giving us the best opportunity to get students to school on time. I'll add that last week and over the weekend, I've spoken to all of the principals that were on the list, the highlighted names. And we've been preaching this for some time that, this was a likelihood coming, and they understood, what we were doing and what we were facing in terms of the double runs and the bus drivers.
So, Mr. Boyle, I don't know if this is an action item that you all need to take action on. We have planned to communicate the changes. I think Mark has already indicated that most of our schools have been notified already, if not all of them. So I don't know we're asking for action on this. We just simply want to make you aware.
We, in communications with the principals, I told them during my telephone calls that this was going to split committee, that it was not official. We shouldn't do anything with it until we brought it to you all. I'm not sure how we've done bell times in the past, if that has been an information item or if it has been approved. So that would be the pleasure of the committee.
I do show this as an action on the agenda. Michelle, do we need to vote on this to send it to the full board?
It's really the choice of the committee. Mark said he doesn't know how it's done in the past, and I wish I had better information. I don't think they've changed in the time that I've been with the district, so I don't know if they were just adopted and published. If the committee's comfortable with the administration just moving forward, that's fine as well. I don't know that this is necessarily an action item. I put it on the agenda that way just to protect it in case it was.
And that's just for this year?
No, I think that if we continue this in future years, it will position us better to be more successful in getting students to school on time. We always struggle. That the three-tiered system that we have in most of the county is very tight, and this just gives us a little more flexibility, which we'd love to have.
I don't think there's a problem making a motion and sending it to the full board in case, other board members have questions. I don't see that being a problem at all to vote on it.
I don't either.
Okay, I do just want to make sure though that it doesn't just go to consent and get buried, right? I think we should discuss this in the full board. So I'm fine making a motion to send it, but
and anything on consent can always be pulled off. But if you're requesting that this be a discussion, then we can certainly make it a line item, for the August meeting. Is that your concern? You just don't want it on consent?
yeah, I'm fine with voting on it and, it's still having the approval, but I would still like to make sure that we at least share this with the board.
Okay, we can do that because, everything on consent's voted, comes out of committee anyway, and we vote on it. So we can just make it a separate line item if you want to, but anything on consent, everything on consent has always been voted for. And if someone wants to have a discussion, can pull it off, but with your request, we can just, Michelle, we can go ahead and make a note that this will not be on consent per Mr. Morial. So with that being said, I would make a motion to send to the full board the revised bill schedule going forward.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, 3-0. All right, Mr. Denton, Mr. Strickland, anything else on transportation?
I think that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I would just quickly add that, we're going to have a challenging year. So we are planning for things that we know about and sometimes things we don't. So just know that this will be an unusual year for everybody, particularly in transportation.
And I think because it has been an unusual year, I just think with families and kids being out of school since March 11th, I think everyone's gonna, everyone that I've spoken to and the emails that I've received, I think families are just going to be so excited that their kids are able to go back in the buildings. I think there's probably going to be a celebration. Speaking maybe for my community when the yellow buses hit the road. So I think with everything that we've been through since March, I'm hoping that the community will offer the transportation department a lot of grace to work our way back into the schools. So I know you've got a tremendous burden on your shoulders, but just from what I'm hearing, I think parents and families are just going to be so excited when those yellow buses hit the roads again.
Yeah, and I think, I'd like to add, it's great if we try it this year and see how it works. I don't know that I'm necessarily in favor of, writing this in stone and making this a go forward thing too. So we're revising it, and if it works, that's great. If we don't have, concerns from parents, I see some of those, moving 20 minutes later for an opening bell schedule, and I don't know what that does to families as far as, if they are working and they're leaving their child at home now for 20 minutes before they have to go and pick up the bus and things like that. So again, I think we're good for this year, given the the challenges that we're all facing, but I don't know that I would write it in stone.
Well, and I agree, Mr.
Well-
Morial, I know what Mark said, and I think that would be ideal moving forward. I think like anything else, we're going to be evaluating all conditions on a continuous basis. So to lock something in stone for a year after now, something we will a year from now, that may all change. And so we just don't know, but I think it's safe to say that this recommendation obviously is at least for the 2020-2021 school year.
Well, and as an elected official, I think we all need to recognize that nothing is locked in stone, because depending on your terms and stuff, I don't like the term locked in stone, because nothing's locked in stone.
Right.
And if it doesn't work, obviously we're going to change it. And if something needs to be amended or tweaked, we're going to change it. So, and if we're 30 bus drivers short today, and in the past, kids, students may have been at bus stops longer because of, different challenges that the department was working on. So if we think this is the best way to go and we try it out, we may find out students are not waiting as long anymore, because we should have been doing this last year. So I'm excited that we're going to give this a chance, and but I don't think there should ever be a concern that something's locked in stone. Redistricting or reassignment's not locked in stone, because if it doesn't work, we have to change it.
Right. Okay, very good. Anything else for transportation? All right, appreciate that update. Moving on to the Citizens Advisory Committee on Diversity. Ms. Morris?
Good morning. Attached in your documents is the outline for the Citizens Advisory Committee for Diversity. Ms. Stalbert and I have been working on the structural component of it. Dr. Strickland is working on identifying facilitators for this committee, and then obviously once it is all put together. The committee will be, kind of set free like the Citizens Advisory Committee for realignment was, and they will do their work. And this committee, the SPTT, will be their kind of their bridge to the board, so that they can provide updates. And if there are things they identify throughout the year that need to happen quicker rather than waiting till the end of the year, they will bring that to us for this committee to review and have input into the methods and means of working forward. We have an application that will be ready to go. I have the questions on the application on this handout for you all. And then Tahira's team is finishing up the actual online form to complete. And then once this goes to the board, it will all go live and folks will be able to select to apply to join.
And I do see that the committee, that as far as how it's composed, it's proposed we have a rising junior or senior from each high school, a community member residing in each cluster, an administrator, a principal or assistant principal from each cluster, a teacher from each cluster, and one employee from each central services location, and then 3 representatives from the faith community. So just wanted to for those that can't see it, that's what it's proposed to be made of.
Hey, do we know how the meetings are going to be held? Because there's going to be a lot of people in this committee. Is it going to be more group held, or?
Initially, they may need to be virtually. We'll have to see how that works and how the governor opens us up. If not, we'll work with the PDC for social distancing and all of that.
Okay, yeah, because I'm just worried it's going to be like, what, 50 members, They're going to be meeting in small groups at first and have like one large meeting, meet together, because it's kind of hard to speak with a 50-member group,
Yeah, I think we can let the facilitators figure out how to make that work. I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
Well, and yeah, and I think, the walls do retract at PDC, but I think, once we have a facilitator and everything put in place, I don't think we'll have 50 people, but at any rate, we could always break that up into groups, as far as like students and parents and administrators, and I don't know if clergy needs to be there for every meeting, but we'll just figure it out once we find a facilitator. How close are we? Dr. Houlihan, are you planning to bring? I know when we went through the demographers, those applications or resumes per se came to the facilities committee, and the facilities committee chose voted on and recommended to the full board the facilitator for realignment. Is that the same process? When do you think you'll have a list of facilitators to bring to the SPIT committee so that we can make a decision on our recommendation to the full board?
Yes, thank you. My timeline, I was hoping that we would be prepared for that today, and we're just not. And so I think what we're considering right now is trying to identify, number one, provide the SPIT committee with the list of those facilitators, any information we've been able to find in terms of their resume, their background, their credentials, at a minimum for the August SPIT committee, for you all to make a recommendation for who that might be. And possibly whether you may want a co-facilitator. And so, one person versus 2. So my timeline is to kind of look at the August SPIT committee as the next step to bring forth those recommendations. If that pleases this committee, that's kind of what I'm leaning towards.
I think so. And in the meantime, we can still, get the application process going and get the committee put in place while we're choosing a facilitator. I think the community is anxious to start applying. We keep getting a lot of requests from community members that want to apply. So I think, we need to get that application out there, as soon as possible and start working on that while we're, pulling together a facilitator. And we can always call a SPIT committee meeting faster, Joe and Matt, if we think we're close to, being ready for a facilitator. We don't always have to wait till our normal date. If you think you're ready to go with that.
Yeah, absolutely. One question too, are we gonna have like a dedicated web page for this, like as far as the forums and outline and everything?
I'll work with Tahira to make that happen.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right, so Ms. Morris, it looks like we do have action here. Are we voting on, I guess, basically what the committee will be composed of, and then also the questions for the applicants?
Committee in particular in the process, yeah, absolutely, please.
Okay. Has everyone had a chance to review this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend to the full board the process for the Citizens Advisory Committee on Diversity for the application process and how we're going to handle the facilitator at the August meeting.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, next we have an update on the Parkwood mascot.
Yes, good morning again. I met with Miss Allie yesterday, and she just wanted to make sure that the committee was comfortable with the process she was moving forward with, since it is kind of an interesting situation. It's the first time we've implemented this process. She is now kind of a school without a mascot, and she has kind of developed her committee in line with what is under the existing mascot change, so that she has full stakeholder input. And she has herself, her teachers selected a teacher member, her PTO selected a parent representative. She polled her seniors, and over 100 seniors voted for student representatives. I think she has 3 of those. She has a member of the community, and I think that's Chief Gilliard. And then her site-based team elected 3 members to be a participant. The committee is meeting for the first time today at 1. And the plan is that they're going to survey the community and the stakeholders. The committee will then evaluate the results and submit a revised survey with the top, recommendations to her student body. She'd like to do that once school starts, so that she can have a thorough input from her students. And she'll do it during a class for those that are attending under Plan B, and under Plan D, it will go out through Canvas, so that everyone will have an opportunity to vote. And then the committee will then the committee will then review the results and submit the top 3 choices to the superintendent and SPTT for the board to review. Because she's going to want student input, she's requesting that this 45-day period under the existing school mascot change be extended to allow her to have her students and community have good input. And that's her process. And she just wanted me to make sure that the committee was okay with that. And if there were any questions, that I would share those with her before her 1 o'clock meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that update.
Michelle, the only comment I would have to make is that I think the committee has already, it was 45 days, right? For the, what did we land on? Was it 30 or 45?
The policy or the administrative guidelines say 45 days when you're getting the request to change an existing mascot. The provision when there's not a mascot does not have any time frame. She was trying to stick with that 45-day time frame, but she just doesn't think that her committee and her students will be able to vote if we do it on the 45-day time, given
Yeah.
It's the summer and COVID and everything else. So she was asking for just a little bit more time to make sure the process is thorough and she has good input from her students. I would hope by the September SPTT meeting, we'd be able to talk about this again.
I think, you know, I think we stick with the guidelines, and if they need more time, we just extend it. I don't think that's necessarily a conversation we have to have today. But I think when we voted on this, the board was very flexible that if they needed more time, we would give them an extension.
Yep, agreed. So we do have this as, you know, information. So appreciate the update on that. And it doesn't seem like we're asking for months of an extension, just an extension
right.
to get through the process, right? So
Yeah.
as long as we see continued momentum going and the process working, I think we'll all be fine with that.
Correct. Agree.
I hope to have some names, or at least I'll give you a process update at the next SPTT meeting.
Yeah,
You know,
quick
the
question
only-
too. Does this include like middle school voting on it at all, or even the elementary schools in the cluster?
I think the initial stakeholder is going to involve the entire cluster, but then when the second level of the survey goes in place, it'll just be current Parkwood students.
And I think the middle school has a different mascot now, right? Aren't they
think
like
it's
the Bears or something?
With the Bears.
Okay.
The only other idea I had, like, you know, if Miss Allie or however she plans on doing this does a survey, you know, some Survey Monkey or however she decides to do it. I mean, we know how many students are enrolled at Parkwood because they all have a student ID number. So Jay, is there a way, you know, to kind of get to help Miss Allie know, you know, every time, you know, it's a 1616 number or whatever it is, we will know that students can only vote one time with their student ID number. They can't vote multiple times, which I think, you know, we need to assist her, you know, with that survey. But once a student ID has voted, she'll know whether, you know, 70% have participated or 90% have participated. Do you have any thoughts around that survey and one vote per student ID number?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Merrill. There is configurations, and when you're creating these forms, to allow only one vote per, it's called a unique identifier, which would be an ID. And at that time, it does capture who that is, and they can't vote again. And we can run metrics off that to tell you the percentage of students that have voted. So yes, we can accommodate that.
I would just ask that someone from your team, Jay, help Miss Allie, you know, with the survey so that we can get accurate data, and that community members are not voting more than one time, and that we focus on the students and the student ID numbers and what the students want in that community.
Yes, ma'am. I'll help her.
Great. All right. Well, I appreciate that update. Anything else on the Parkwood mascot?
No,
Okay. Moving on, next item on the agenda is the vacancy on the Board of Education. So being that this position was a partisan position, the Union County Republican Party met this past week, and they have nominated Jimmy H. Benchin to fill this vacant position on the Board of Education. So wanted to make sure that the SPIT committee was fully aware of that, and we will need to take action to move this to the full board. Any questions or comments on Mr. Benchin's nomination?
No, I'll just say that Michelle was very helpful in our board notifying the respective party of that vacancy. And we got that letter sent over to Allison Powers, who's the president of the Union County Republican Party. They did hold a meeting and a voting process last week, and they have officially sent their letter of notification with Jimmy Benchen Sr.'s nomination to fulfill that term through 2022. We have received that letter. So with that being said, you know, we will put that on the agenda, and Mr. Benchen will be sworn in at the August meeting. We will have to determine if that's going to be an in-person meeting for the board at the PDC, or, you know, or if that's going to be via Zoom or whatever. But I have communicated with Mr. Benchen after receiving the notification and the formal letter, and he has asked Judge Jeff Carpenter to do the swearing in for his his position. So that's going to be the plan for August, is for that swearing in process.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I'm more than happy to have Jimmy on the board, so it'd be a good addition.
Yeah, likewise.
Absolutely. I think he's going to be a wonderful addition to the board.
Great. So we need a vote on that. So I'll entertain a motion to take this nomination to the full board.
Motion to send to the full board the nomination of Jimmy Benchen Sr.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. So in closing, we do have some information to be taken to the full board. We have let's go over the list here. So from transportation, we have the contracted transportation for AT&T to move to, or to include the daily rate. We also have the proposed bell schedule change. From technology, I don't believe we have anything that needs to go to the full board there, correct?
Yes, that's correct. It was just informational.
Okay. Citizens advisory.
Hey, Joe, we might just want to give an update to the full board on that at our next meeting, kind of with the funding and all that, and where the stuff's going.
Yeah, that's a good point. Mr. Parker, would you be able to give us a presentation at the full board on the CARES funding?
Yes, I can. I can review that same material.
Okay, great.
Okay, so that would, Michelle, if you don't mind making a note, we'll just have that as a line item for Jay to present to the full board.
Okay, great. All right, and then we have the Citizens Advisory Committee on Diversity, the application process. And the vacancy on the board, the nomination of Jimmy H. Benchen Sr. Did I miss anything? Okay, great. All right, and then next meeting we will have scheduled for August 26th at 7:30. And depending on the situation at that point, we will either meet in person at the PDC or virtually again with Zoom. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you,
Have a good
everybody.
day.
Bye.